The rain came down in sheets, turning the city streets into rivers of black glass. Dominic Sterling stepped out of his sleek black Mercedes, the door held open by his driver, and immediately felt the cold bite of October wind cut through his tailored suit. He didn't reach for an umbrella. There was something about the rain that felt appropriate today, cleansing, perhaps, or maybe just punishing. He couldn't decide which. Sterling Industries headquarters rose 40 stories above him, all steel and tinted glass, a monument to everything he'd built from absolutely nothing. 42 years old, and he'd spent the last 20 turning dreams into empires. Today would be the culmination of it all. $8 billion. The merger with Nightshade Global. His legacy secured. He took 3 steps toward the revolving doors. Then she appeared. A small figure darted out from between 2 parked cars, moving so fast Dominic barely had time to register what was happening before tiny fingers locked around the sleeve of his jacket. He looked down and found himself staring into the face of a child, maybe 8 years old, with dark hair plastered to her skull by rain, and eyes that held something he couldn't name. Desperation maybe. Or terror. The girl's voice came out in gasps, like she'd been running. "Please don't go to the meeting today. Something terrible will happen." Dominic blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. The child was soaked through, shivering, her small frame trembling as she clung to him. He glanced around, searching for a parent, a guardian, anyone who might claim her. The street was empty except for the usual morning rush of executives and assistants hurrying through the rain. He crouched down to her level, rain dripping from his hair. Carefully, he tried to pry her fingers loose. "Hey, sweetheart, are you lost? Where are your parents?" The girl didn't let go. Her grip tightened, nails digging into expensive fabric. Her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made something cold slide down his spine. "They're going to hurt you. Please, I'm begging you. Don't go inside." Dominic's driver moved closer, concerned, but Dominic held up a hand to stop him. The girl was clearly frightened, possibly confused. Maybe she'd wandered away from someone, gotten turned around in the maze of downtown buildings. He kept his voice gentle. "I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm sure whoever you're looking for, you'll lose everything that matters." The words came out as a scream, raw and desperate, and several people on the sidewalk stopped to stare. Dominic felt heat rise in his face, part embarrassment, part genuine concern for this child who seemed so utterly convinced of something she couldn't possibly understand. His head of security emerged from the building, moving quickly toward them. "Mr. Sterling, is there a problem?" The girl's eyes darted to the security guard, then back to Dominic, and something shifted in her expression. A kind of resignation, like she'd already lost a battle she'd been fighting. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and Dominic had to lean closer to hear her over the rain. "Your daughter would want you to stay." The world stopped. Dominic's breath caught in his throat, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. The rain, the street, the watching crowd, all of it dissolved into white noise. His daughter. The words echoed in his head, impossible and cruel. He didn't have a daughter. His daughter had died 8 years ago, before she'd ever taken her first breath, buried alongside the only woman he'd ever loved. His hands, steady a moment before, began to shake. He opened his mouth to ask how she knew, how she could possibly know, but when he looked up, the girl was already moving. She slipped between 2 parked cars with the practiced ease of a shadow, and by the time Dominic stood and tried to follow, she'd vanished into the morning crowd. He stood there in the rain, water running down his face, his heart hammering against his ribs. Around him, the city resumed its normal rhythm. People walking, cars passing, the world spinning forward as if nothing had changed. But something had. Something fundamental had cracked open inside his chest, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been given a warning he didn't understand. His security guard touched his elbow gently. "Sir, are you all right?" Dominic wiped rain from his face and forced himself to nod. "Find out who that child was. Check the security cameras. I want to know where she came from." The guard nodded and spoke quietly into his radio. Dominic turned back toward the building, but his feet felt heavier now, each step requiring conscious effort. Behind him, the street looked the same as it always did. But somewhere in the crowd, an 8-year-old girl with desperate eyes had disappeared like smoke. And she'd known about his daughter. The elevator ride to the 38th floor gave Dominic 60 seconds to pull himself together. He watched his reflection in the polished steel doors, expensive suit, perfect haircut, the face of a man who'd conquered every challenge life had thrown at him. Except he couldn't conquer the tremble in his hands, or the way his heart still raced like he'd run a marathon. "Your daughter would want you to stay." He closed his eyes and forced the memory down, locked it away in the same mental vault where he kept everything related to Celeste. That vault hadn't been opened in years. It was safer that way. The doors slid open with a soft chime, and his assistant Nadia looked up from her desk with a smile that faltered when she saw his face. "Mr. Sterling, you're soaking wet. Should I?" "I'm fine." His voice came out harsher than he'd intended, and he saw her flinch slightly. He softened his tone. "Coffee, please. And hold my calls for the next hour." She nodded, already reaching for the phone, and Dominic walked past her into his corner office. The space was exactly as he'd left it the night before. Minimalist, efficient, everything in its place. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that most people would kill for. He'd stopped noticing it years ago. His desk was glass and steel, uncluttered except for a laptop, a single fountain pen, and one framed photograph. Dominic picked up the frame without thinking, a reflex born from 8 years of ritual. Celeste smiled at him from behind the glass, frozen forever at 28, her dark hair caught mid-laugh by whatever had been funny that day. He couldn't remember anymore. The memories were starting to blur at the edges, which terrified him more than he'd ever admit. She died on a Tuesday. October 15th, 8 years ago. He remembered because Tuesdays had always been their day, cheap date night even after they could afford expensive restaurants. She'd insisted on keeping the tradition. Said it kept them grounded. And then one Tuesday she'd gone into labor 3 weeks early, and everything had gone wrong so fast. The doctors said she'd hemorrhaged. Something about the placenta, complications they couldn't predict. He remembered screaming for them to save her, remembered signing forms he didn't read, remembered the awful quiet of the room after the machine stopped beeping. Someone had told him the baby hadn't made it either. A girl. He'd never even gotten to hold her. Dominic set the photo down carefully and turned away from it. That was 8 years ago. He'd built an empire since then. Thrown himself into work until the grief became background noise, a constant hum he'd learned to ignore. He was fine. He was successful. He was. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Vaughn is here to see you." "Theo." Dominic took a breath and straightened his tie. "Send him in." The door opened, and Theo Vaughn walked in with the easy confidence of someone who'd known Dominic since they were 10 years old. He was shorter than Dominic, stockier, with the kind of face that always looked friendly even when he was angry. They'd grown up on the same block, started their first business together selling lawn care services in high school. When Dominic had decided to take the leap into tech, Theo had been right there beside him. "Big day." Theo dropped into the leather chair across from Dominic's desk without being invited. "The nightshade deal. You ready for this?" Dominic studied his friend's face, searching for something he couldn't name. Theo looked normal, relaxed, excited, maybe a little nervous the way anyone would be before an $8 billion merger. Nothing suspicious. Nothing wrong. So why did Dominic suddenly feel like he was looking at a stranger? Something strange happened this morning. He kept his voice casual, watching for a reaction. "A kid stopped me outside. Said I shouldn't go to the meeting today." Theo laughed, the sound genuine and easy. "A kid? What, like a fortune teller or something?" She knew about Celeste. About the baby. The laugh died. Theo's expression shifted into something more serious, more careful. "Dom, someone's messing with you. Maybe a reporter digging for a story hired some kid to shake you up before the deal. You know how these corporate vultures work." It made sense. Perfect sense. Dominic wanted to believe it, wanted to accept the logical explanation and move on with his day. But there was something about the way that girl had looked at him, like she'd seen through every wall he'd built, straight into the parts of himself he kept hidden. Theo leaned forward, his voice dropping into that tone he used when he was being sincere. "Listen, you've worked your whole life for this. Don't let some random incident mess with your head. The nightshade deal is solid. I've checked every clause, every number. Victor Kane is aggressive, sure, but he's fair. We close this today and Sterling Industries becomes untouchable. That's what we wanted, right?" "Right." Dominic heard himself say the word, but he felt disconnected from it, like he was listening to someone else speak. "That's what we wanted." Theo stood, clapping him on the shoulder as he passed. 1 p.m. Boardroom. "We're going to make history." The door closed behind him, and Dominic was alone again with the rain and the photograph and the memory of desperate eyes. He turned back to the window, watching water stream down the glass, distorting the city beyond into abstract shapes. Everything Theo said made sense. It was probably a reporter, or a prank, or just a confused child who'd somehow learned details about his life. These things happened. There were entire websites dedicated to the personal lives of billionaires. But none of that explained how the girl had looked at him. Like she knew him. Like she'd been searching for him her entire life and had finally, desperately, found him. "Your daughter would want you to stay." Lily's voice came back to him, and with it a wave of guilt so powerful it nearly doubled him over. She'd tried to warn him. 3 times, she'd said. 3 times she'd lived through this, watched him get arrested, watched his world collapse. And he'd ignored her. Dismissed her as impossible, as a trick, as anything but real. Because believing she was real meant believing his daughter had been alive for 8 years while he'd thought she was dead. It meant someone had stolen her, lied to him, let him grieve for a child who was out there somewhere. And that level of cruelty was too much to accept. Except he'd accepted Theo's betrayal, hadn't he? And that was just as cruel. The cell door clanged open. A guard stood there with a well-dressed man in his 50s carrying a briefcase. Dominic recognized him, Aaron Chin, the criminal defense attorney his company kept on retainer for executive legal issues. He'd never imagined needing him for himself. Mr. Sterling. Chen's voice was carefully neutral as he entered the cell. The guard locked the door behind him, giving them privacy. I've been reviewing the evidence against you. We need to talk. Dominic looked up at him, and he knew his face must look hollow. Broken. Tell me there's a way out of this. Chin sat down on the bench, keeping a professional distance between them. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. The evidence is extensive. Bank records, emails, witness testimony. They're charging you with wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. If convicted on all counts, you're looking at 20 years minimum. 20 years. The number felt abstract, impossible. Dominic would be 62 when he got out. An old man who'd lost everything. I didn't do any of this. I believe you. Chen's response surprised him. The evidence is too perfect. Too clean. In my experience, real criminals make mistakes. They leave gaps. This, he gestured to his notes. This is someone who spent years building an airtight case. The question is who and why. Theo Vaughn. Dominic said the name and it tasted like poison. My business partner. He must have been planning this for years. Can you prove it? That was the question, wasn't it? Could he prove anything? Or was he just going to be the paranoid billionaire claiming his best friend had framed him? No jury would believe that without evidence. Chin leaned forward, his voice dropping. Listen to me carefully. Right now the FBI thinks they have an open and shut case. But if we can find even one piece of evidence that points to someone else, one bank record that doesn't match, one witness who saw something different, we can start pulling threads. The whole case could unravel. How do we do that from in here? We don't. Chin pulled out a business card and slid it across the bench. This is a private investigator. Former FBI. If anyone can find holes in their case, it's him. But Dominic, his expression turned serious, this is going to get worse before it gets better. The media is destroying you. Your company's stock has dropped 40%. The board is calling for your permanent removal. You need to prepare yourself for a very long fight. Dominic took the card, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. 20 years. Maybe more if they added charges. His entire life dismantled piece by piece while Theo and Victor Kane carved up Sterling Industries like vultures. Unless he could prove his innocence. Unless someone believed him. Lily had believed him. No, Lily had tried to save him. And he'd pushed her away. Chin stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. There's a child who's been trying to reach you. Says her name is Lily. Claims she's your daughter. My office has been getting calls. Dominic's head snapped up. She's real? Where is she? I don't know. Chen's expression was puzzled. She calls from different numbers, never stays on the line long enough to trace. But she keeps saying she has proof. Evidence that could clear your name. I assumed it was a hoax, but it's not. Dominic stood, moving to the cell door even though it was locked. She calls again, you tell her I believe her. Tell her I'm sorry I didn't listen. And tell her I need her help. Chin nodded slowly, making a note on his pad. I'll pass that along. But Mr. Sterling, even if this girl exists, even if she has information, a child's testimony isn't going to hold up in federal court. Then we'll find something that does. The guard returned to let Chin out, and Dominic was alone again with the fluorescent lights and the weight of his mistakes. But for the first time since the handcuffs had closed around his wrists, he felt something other than despair. He felt determination. Somewhere out there, his daughter was trying to save him. The least he could do was fight. 8 years ago, on a Tuesday night in October, Celeste Sterling went into labor 3 weeks early. The contractions started during dinner, just mild cramping at first, easy to dismiss as indigestion. But within an hour, they'd intensified into waves of pain that left her gasping. Dominic had driven to the hospital faster than he'd ever driven in his life, one hand on the wheel and one hand gripping hers while she breathed through each contraction. Century Medical Center's maternity ward was quiet that night. A skeleton crew working the overnight shift. The doctor on call was Marcus Webb, a man in his late 40s with tired eyes and steady hands. He'd examined Celeste and delivered the news in a calm voice that did nothing to hide his concern. The baby's in distress. Heart rate is dropping. We need to do an emergency C-section. The operating room had been all harsh white light and beeping machines. Dominic had been allowed to stay at Celeste's head, holding her hand while she trembled on the table. He'd whispered promises to her, that everything would be fine, that she was strong, that soon they'd be holding their daughter. But complications had started almost immediately. Celeste hemorrhaging. The words from one of the nurses, urgent and clipped. Doctor, we're losing her. Dominic had watched his wife's face go pale, watched her eyes roll back as her blood pressure plummeted. The room had exploded into controlled chaos, nurses rushing in with bags of blood, machines screaming their warnings, Dr. Webb barking orders while his hands worked inside Celeste's body. And then the choice that had destroyed everything. We can't save both of them. Dr. Webb's voice cutting through the noise. Mr. Sterling, you need to decide. Your wife or the baby. Right now. Dominic had been 24 years old, terrified, watching the only person he'd ever loved dying on a table in front of him. The choice hadn't felt like a choice at all. Save my wife. The words had come out broken, desperate. Please save Celeste. Dr. Webb had nodded and turned back to his work. And for a few minutes it had seemed like it might work. Celeste's blood pressure had stabilized. The hemorrhaging had slowed. Dominic had allowed himself to hope. Then he'd heard the baby cry. It had been weak, barely audible over the machines, but unmistakable. His daughter, alive, fighting for breath in a world she'd been born into too soon. One of the nurses had rushed her to the corner of the room, working frantically to clear her airways, to get her breathing properly. And Dominic had watched his wife's eyes flutter open one last time. Had seen her look toward the sound of their daughter's cry. Had seen her smile, tired and beautiful and full of love. She has your eyes, Celeste had whispered. The last words she'd ever speak. Take care of her. Then her monitors had flatlined and Dominic's world had ended. What happened next he'd always remembered through a fog of shock and grief. Dr. Webb had called time of death at 11:47 p.m. Someone had led Dominic out of the operating room while they worked on the baby. He'd sat in a waiting room for what felt like hours, numb and hollow, until Dr. Webb had appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. We did everything we could. Your wife is gone. And the baby, she paused, and Dominic had known what was coming before he said it. She didn't make it either. Both of them. Gone. Leaving him alone in a world that suddenly made no sense. Except that was a lie. The baby had survived. Tiny and fragile, but breathing. Fighting. Alive. And Dr. Webb had looked at the newborn in her warming bed, had looked at Dominic Sterling sitting broken in the waiting room, and had made a choice. A monstrous choice that he'd been paid to make. A nurse named Elena Rodriguez had been in the operating room that night. She'd watched Dr. Webb pronounce the baby dead while the infant's chest still rose and fell. She'd watched him falsify the death certificate, watched him prepare to have the baby sent to the morgue while she was still warm. Elena had been a nurse for 15 years. She'd seen doctors make difficult calls, had watched them navigate impossible ethical situations. But she'd never seen anything like this. When her shift ended at 6 a.m., Elena had made her own choice. She'd wrapped the baby in blankets stolen from the supply closet. Had walked out of Century Medical Center with an infant hidden under her coat. Had disappeared into the city before anyone realized what she'd done. For 8 years, Elena had raised Lily in hiding. Moving from apartment to apartment, city to city, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. She'd homeschooled her, kept her away from doctors and schools and anywhere they might ask questions about a child with no birth certificate, no social security number, no legal existence. And she'd loved her. Fiercely. Completely. The daughter she'd saved from a conspiracy she didn't fully understand. Lily had been special from the beginning. Elena had noticed it early, the way the child seemed to know things before they happened. How she'd wake up crying about events that wouldn't occur until days later. Dreams that were more like visions, showing her fragments of a future she couldn't change. On Lily's 8th birthday, Elena had finally told her the truth. Your father is alive. His name is Dominic Sterling. He doesn't know you exist because bad people told him you died. But you're real, sweetheart. You're real and you're wonderful, and someday when it's safe maybe you can find him. 3 weeks later, Elena had collapsed at the grocery store. A brain aneurysm, the doctors said. Quick and painless. She'd been dead before the ambulance arrived. And Lily had been alone. The social workers had tried to place her in foster care, but Lily had run. She'd spent 2 months living on the streets, sleeping in shelters, stealing food when she had to. Using her visions to stay one step ahead of the people trying to find her. Because she had a mission now. A purpose that kept her moving forward even when everything else fell apart. She had to find her father. Had to warn him about what was coming. Had to save him the way Elena had saved her. The visions had shown her everything. Theo's betrayal. Victor Kane's conspiracy. The meeting where it would all fall apart. She'd seen her father in handcuffs, seen him broken and alone in a prison cell. Seen his empire crumble while the men who destroyed him celebrated their victory. And she'd seen that she was the only one who could stop it. So Lily had tracked down Dominic Sterling. Had stood in the rain outside his office building, desperate and terrified, and tried to make him understand. Tried to warn him about Theo, about the meeting, about everything that was going to happen. But he hadn't listened. And now he was in prison exactly like she'd seen. Exactly like the visions had showed her. Except this time felt different. This time he'd actually heard her, even if he hadn't believed. This time, when she'd touched his hand in the car, he'd looked at her like he wanted to believe. This time maybe she could change things. Lily stood in the alley behind Sterling Industries, watching the building's service entrance through the October darkness. She was shivering, her jacket was too thin for this weather, and she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. But that didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting the evidence she needed. The evidence that would prove her father was innocent. She knew where it was. The visions had shown her. In Theo Vaughn's office, locked in a safe behind a painting of some abstract art piece Lily didn't understand. A flash drive containing the real financial records. The proof of how Theo and Victor Kane had manufactured evidence, created fake bank accounts, built a paper trail that led nowhere but to Dominic Sterling's destruction. Getting to it meant breaking into one of the most secure buildings in the city. Lily had been planning this for 3 days. She'd studied the security patterns, memorized the guard rotations, figured out which cameras had blind spots. She'd learned that the service entrance card reader had a glitch. If you swiped a card at just the right angle, sometimes it would open even with an invalid credential. She'd stolen a janitor's badge that morning. Had watched him set it down while he ate lunch in the food court, had waited until he was distracted by his phone, had walked away with his access card tucked in her pocket. Now she just had to be brave enough to use it. What would you do if you were 8 years old and the only person who could save your father? Would you take the risk? Would you walk into danger because staying safe meant losing everything that mattered? Lily didn't have a choice. So she took a breath, gripped the stolen card reader tight, and walked toward the service entrance like she belonged there. The card reader beeped. The door clicked open. And Lily stepped into Sterling Industries. The building was different at night. Quieter. Emptier. Emergency lighting turned the hallways into canyons of shadow, and Lily's footsteps sounded impossibly loud on the polished floors. She kept to the walls, moving quickly but carefully, avoiding the cameras she'd memorized during her reconnaissance. The elevator would be too risky. Security would see her on the monitors, would send guards to investigate. So Lily found the stairwell and started climbing. 38 floors. Her legs burned by the time she reached the 20th floor, screamed by the 30th. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Theo's office was on the 38th floor, just down the hall from the boardroom where her father had been arrested that afternoon. The door was locked, but Lily had expected that. She pulled out a paperclip she'd straightened earlier, something she'd learned from a YouTube video on picking basic locks. It took 3 tries and hands that wouldn't stop shaking, but eventually the lock clicked open. The office was dark except for the city lights filtering through the windows. Lily closed the door behind her and pulled out the small flashlight she'd stolen from a convenience store. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating expensive furniture and corporate art. There, on the far wall, the abstract painting Elena had shown her in a vision before she died. Lily crossed to it and carefully lifted the frame off the wall, revealing a wall safe underneath. This was the part she wasn't sure about. The visions had shown her the safe but not the combination. She'd have to guess. Unless... Lily closed her eyes and let her mind drift the way Elena had taught her. Let the visions come, showing her fragments of the future, the past, moments that were and weren't and might still be. Sometimes, if she was lucky, they showed her what she needed. Numbers appeared behind her eyelids. October 15, 17. October 15, 2017. The day Celeste Sterling had died. The day Lily had been born. Her hands trembling, Lily entered the combination. The safe clicked open. Inside was exactly what she'd been looking for, a flash drive, small and black and ordinary looking. But when Lily pulled it out, she felt the weight of what it contained. Years of planning. Evidence of conspiracy. Proof that Theo Von and Victor Kane had manufactured every piece of evidence against Dominic Sterling. This tiny piece of plastic and metal could save her father's life. Lily shoved it in her pocket and started to replace the painting when she heard voices in the hallway outside. Her heart stopped. The flashlight fell from her hands, clattering on the desk. She lunged for it, killed the beam, and pressed herself against the wall behind Theo's desk. The voices grew louder. Two men talking as they approached. Should be in that cell for the rest of his miserable life. That was Theo's voice, bitter and triumphant. 20 years minimum. By the time he gets out, there won't be anything left of Sterling Industries. We'll have absorbed it completely. You did good work. The second voice was smoother, older. Victor Kane. Very patient. Very thorough. The door handle turned. Lily's breath caught in her throat. There was nowhere to hide. No way out except past them. If they turned on the lights, they'd see her immediately. The door opened. Light from the hallway spilled in, and Lily pressed herself smaller, trying to become invisible against the darkness. Theo's hand found the light switch. Lily ran. She burst out from behind the desk, a small shadow moving fast. Theo shouted something, lunging for her, but she was already past him. Victor Kane tried to block the doorway, but Lily was small and quick. She ducked under his grabbing hands and sprinted into the hallway. Behind her, she heard Theo yelling into a phone. Security. 38th floor. We have an intruder. Lily's legs pumped as she ran for the stairwell. Her lungs burned. The flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. She could hear footsteps behind her, men who were bigger and faster and would catch her if she didn't. The stairwell door slammed open and Lily threw herself through it. Started taking the stairs two at a time, her small hands gripping the railing to keep from falling. Above her, the door crashed open again. Footsteps thundering down after her. She had 38 floors to descend. They'd catch her before she made it halfway. Unless she did something crazy. At the 35th floor, Lily stopped running down. She ran out into the hallway instead, sprinting for the other stairwell on the opposite side of the building. Behind her, she heard confusion as the footsteps continued past the floor, assuming she was still going down. It bought her maybe 30 seconds. Lily found the other stairwell and started down again, quieter now, listening for sounds of pursuit. Her whole body shook with adrenaline and fear. The flash drive pressed against her leg through her pocket, the most important thing in the world. 20 floors. 15. 10. She heard voices below her now. Security guards coming up to block her escape. She was trapped between them and whoever was coming down from above. But at the 5th floor, Lily remembered something she'd seen during her reconnaissance. A maintenance access door that led to the building's ventilation system. It would be locked, but... She pulled out her paperclip and went to work. The lock was more complex than Theo's office door, and her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the clip straight. Behind her, the footsteps were getting closer. Above and below, closing in like a vice. The lock clicked open. Lily pulled the door shut behind her and found herself in a narrow maintenance corridor, dimly lit and smelling of dust and machine oil. The space was barely wide enough for an adult, but perfect for an 8-year-old. She crawled through the darkness, following the corridor as it wound through the building's guts. Eventually, she found what she was looking for, an access ladder leading down to the basement. She climbed down, dropped into a storage room filled with cleaning supplies and old furniture, and slipped out through a door that led to the parking garage. The night air hit her like a blessing. Lily ran through the garage, past expensive cars and security cameras, until she reached the street. Only then did she stop, gasping for breath, her whole body trembling. In her pocket, the flash drive felt like hope. Like maybe, just maybe, this time things could be different. Now she just had to get it to someone who could help. Dominic woke to the sound of his cell door opening. For a disoriented moment, he thought it was morning, time for breakfast and another day of waiting for his bail hearing. Then he saw Aaron Chin standing in the doorway with an expression that might have been hope. "We need to go." "No." Chin's voice was urgent. "I filed an emergency motion with Judge Patterson. She's agreed to hear it immediately." It was 2 in the morning. Federal judges didn't hear emergency motions at 2 in the morning unless something extraordinary had happened. Dominic stood, his body aching from sleeping on the metal bench. "What's going on?" "Your daughter brought me a flash drive." Chin pulled out an evidence bag containing the small black drive. "She broke into Sterling Industries tonight, stole it from Theo Von's office. The things on this drive, Dominic," his voice dropped, "they prove everything. The manufactured evidence, the fake bank accounts, emails between Theo and Victor Kane planning the entire frame-up. It's all here." Dominic felt his heart start beating again after 12 hours of numbness. Lily did that? An 8-year-old child broke into one of the most secure buildings in the city? She did more than that. Chin pulled out another document. She also brought me this, a diary from a nurse named Elena Rodriguez, the woman who raised her. It details everything from the night your daughter was born, the conspiracy to fake her death, Dr. Webb's involvement, Theo Vaughn paying him off to keep you emotionally vulnerable. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. Theo was behind that too? He's the reason I thought my daughter was dead? According to the diary, yes. Chin tucked the documents back into his briefcase. Elena didn't know all the details, but she knew enough to understand that powerful people wanted your daughter to disappear. She saved Lily's life by taking her that night. And now Lily is returning the favor. The drive to the courthouse took 15 minutes. Dominic sat in the back of Chen's car, flanked by federal marshals, trying to process what he'd just learned. His daughter, the child he'd mourned for 8 years, was alive, was real, had risked her life tonight to save his. And he dismissed her as impossible, as a trick, as anything but the truth. Judge Patterson's chambers were small and cramped, filled with law books and the smell of old coffee. The judge herself was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She gestured for everyone to sit, Dominic and Chin on one side, the federal prosecutor on the other. This better be good, Mr. Chin. I don't appreciate being woken up at 2 in the morning. Chin laid out the flash drive in the diary. Your Honor, new evidence has come to light that proves Mr. Sterling was framed. These documents show a conspiracy between his business partner and Victor Kane to manufacture evidence of fraud. The prosecutor leaned forward, frowning. Your Honor, we haven't had time to authenticate any of this. Could be. It's real. Chin pulled out printouts of the files. Bank records showing payments from Victor Kane to Theo Vaughn. Emails discussing how to plant evidence. Text messages coordinating with Dr. Marcus Webb to falsify medical records. This isn't a frame job, Your Honor. It's a multi-year conspiracy. Judge Patterson took the documents and began reading. The room fell silent except for the rustle of paper. Dominic watched her face, trying to read her expression, but she gave nothing away. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Prosecutor, how long have you had this case? 2 weeks, Your Honor. We were brought in by Mr. Vaughn after he discovered the alleged fraud. And you never questioned why a business partner would have such detailed knowledge of offshore accounts? Why he'd have emails and bank records that should have been private? The prosecutor hesitated. Mr. Vaughn came to us as a whistleblower. We had no reason to doubt his motives. Until now. Judge Patterson set down the papers. Based on this evidence, I'm granting bail for Mr. Sterling. $1 million, supervised release, ankle monitor. He's not to leave the state. Your Honor, the prosecutor started to object. I'm also ordering an immediate investigation into Theodore Vaughn and Victor Kane. If these documents are authentic, and they appear to be, then we're looking at conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, and possibly accessory to kidnapping. The judge fixed Dominic with a stern look. Mr. Sterling, you're free to go for now. But don't make me regret this decision. Dominic could barely speak. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Thank whoever brought you this evidence. Chin stood, gathering his papers. Because without it, you'd be looking at 20 years. Outside the courthouse, dawn was breaking over the city. Dominic stood on the steps, breathing free air for the first time in 12 hours. His company was still in chaos. His reputation was still destroyed. But he wasn't in handcuffs anymore. And somewhere in the city, his daughter was waiting. Chin touched his arm. She wouldn't tell me where she's staying. Said it wasn't safe to come out yet. But she asked me to give you this. He handed Dominic a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was childish, uneven, the letters carefully formed by someone who'd been homeschooled by a nurse on the run. Dad, I knew you'd believe me eventually. Elena said you had a good heart. She was right. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them from arresting you. But I promise I'll keep fighting. We'll get them. Together. Lily. Dominic pressed the paper to his chest and felt something break open inside him. Relief. Joy. Grief for all the years they'd lost. And underneath it all, a fierce determination. Lily had saved him. Now it was his turn to save her. And to make Theo and Victor Kane pay for everything they'd taken from both of them. The morning sun caught the edges of the courthouse steps, turning them gold. Dominic stood there with Aaron Chin beside him, the ankle monitor hidden beneath his pants, a reminder that freedom was conditional. Reporters were already gathering at the bottom of the steps, cameras raised, questions forming. But Dominic didn't see them. He saw her. Lily stood at the edge of the crowd, half hidden behind a stone pillar. She wore the same faded purple sweater from that night in his office, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come half loose. She looked small and uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be there. Like she thought he might still not believe her. Their eyes met across the distance, and something in Dominic's chest shattered. He moved without thinking, taking the steps 2 at a time. The reporters called after him, but their voices faded into white noise. The world narrowed down to this moment, this child, this impossible miracle he'd been grieving for 8 years. Lily took a step forward, then stopped. Her hands twisted together in front of her, and Dominic could see she was trembling. He slowed as he reached her, suddenly aware of how little he knew about being a father. He'd missed everything: first words, first steps, 8 years of birthdays and scraped knees and bedtime stories. How did you make up for that? How did you bridge a gap that wide? You're real. The words came out rough, barely more than a whisper. Dominic dropped to his knees on the concrete so they were eye level. You're really my daughter. Lily nodded, and he saw tears starting to spill down her cheeks. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them from arresting you. I tried so hard, but you wouldn't listen, and I didn't know what else to do, and... Her words tumbled over each other, frantic and desperate, and Dominic realized she thought he was angry with her. Thought he blamed her for not trying hard enough. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, his hands settled gently on her shoulders. You saved me. You broke into one of the most secure buildings in the city. You risked your life to get that evidence. You're 8 years old, and you're the bravest person I've ever met. Lily's face crumpled. I just wanted to find you. I've been looking for so long, and when Elena died, I was so scared I'd never... The rest of the sentence disappeared into sobs. And Dominic did what he should have done 8 years ago if the world had been fair. He pulled his daughter into his arms and held her while she cried. She was so small. That was the first thing that hit him. Small and fragile, all sharp angles and trembling limbs. He could feel her heart racing against his chest, could feel 8 years of fear and loneliness pouring out of her. His own tears came without warning, hot and uncontrollable, and he didn't try to stop them. I'm sorry. The words broke apart in his throat. I'm so sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry for everything you went through alone. Lily's arms wrapped around his neck, holding on like she was afraid he'd disappear. It wasn't your fault. You didn't know. They lied to you. But I should have known. Dominic pulled back just enough to see her face. That night in the rain when you told me about Celeste, I should have known then. Something in my heart recognized you, but I was too scared to believe it. Lily wiped at her face with the sleeve of her sweater, the gesture so achingly young it made his chest hurt. Elena used to say that sometimes the truth is scarier than lies. Because lies let you keep pretending everything's okay. Your mom, Elena, she sounds like she was an amazing person. She was. Lily's voice went soft, distant. She saved my life. Literally. And she loved me even though I wasn't really hers. She used to tell me stories about you. About how you built a company from nothing. How you were smart and kind and brave. She said when I finally found you, you'd believe me because you had a good heart. Dominic felt something crack open in his chest. She was right. I do believe you. I believe every word. And I'm never letting you go again. Lily launched herself back into his arms, and they stayed like that on the courthouse steps while the morning sun climbed higher and reporters took pictures that would be on every news site by noon. Dominic didn't care. Let them see. Let the whole world see that Dominic Sterling had just gotten back everything that mattered. After a long moment, Lily pulled back slightly. Her voice dropped to something hesitant, vulnerable. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think, her fingers twisted in the fabric of his shirt, do you think Mama would be happy? That I found you? That we're together? The question hit Dominic like a physical blow. He thought about Celeste in that hospital bed, thought about her last words. Take care of her. She'd known. Somehow, in those final moments, she'd known their daughter had survived. I think your mama is the reason you found me. He brushed a strand of hair back from Lily's face, and the gesture felt both foreign and completely natural. I think she's been watching over you this whole time. Keeping you safe until you could get back to me. I dream about her sometimes. Lily's voice went quiet. I see her holding me when I was a baby. And she's smiling. She tells me she loves me and that I have your eyes, and that everything's going to be okay. Dominic's vision blurred with fresh tears. Those aren't just dreams, sweetheart. Those are memories. Real ones. Your mama held you. She loved you. And wherever she is now, I know she's proud of you. Lily nodded, and something in her expression shifted. Relief maybe. Or peace. Like she'd been carrying a question for 8 years and had finally gotten an answer. Behind them, Aaron Chin cleared his throat gently. I hate to interrupt, but we should probably get you somewhere more private. The media's starting to close in. Dominic stood, and this time when he held out his hand, Lily took it without hesitation. Her small fingers wrapped around his, and the simple contact felt like the most important thing in the world. This was real. She was real. After 8 years of grief and loneliness, he had his daughter back. Come on. He squeezed her hand gently. Let's go home. They walked down the courthouse steps together, and if anyone had asked Dominic in that moment what his company was worth or what the stock price was doing or whether he'd ever get Sterling Industries back, he wouldn't have been able to answer. Because none of that mattered anymore. All that mattered was the small hand in his and the future they were going to build together. The war room Aaron Chin set up in his law firm's conference space looked like something from a crime drama. White boards covered in timelines and connections. Boxes of documents stacked against the walls. Laptops open on every available surface, displaying spreadsheets and bank records and email chains. Dominic stood at the head of the table, looking at 8 years of conspiracy laid out in front of him. The FBI had gotten involved the moment Judge Patterson saw the evidence. Now Special Agent Reed, the same man who'd arrested Dominic, sat at the table with a team of forensic accountants, unraveling every thread of Theo and Victor Kane's plan. This is extensive. Reed tapped a file folder thick with printouts. They didn't just frame you for fraud. They built an entire alternate financial history. Offshore accounts that mirrored your legitimate ones. Transactions timed to match your real business dealings. It's actually brilliant in a horrible way. Dominic felt Lily's hand slip into his. She'd barely left his side since the courthouse, like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go for too long. He squeezed her fingers reassuringly. How long before you can arrest them? We're building the case now. Reed pulled up a document on his laptop. But we need to be careful. Victor Kane has lawyers who could tie this up in court for years. We need testimony from Dr. Webb to connect all the pieces. Aaron Chin leaned forward. My private investigator tracked Webb to the Cayman Islands. He's willing to talk in exchange for immunity. Apparently he's been living with the guilt for 8 years. When he heard Dominic had been arrested, it pushed him over the edge. Lily spoke up for the first time since they'd arrived. You should feel guilty. You told my dad I was dead. You let everyone think I died. Her voice carried an anger that seemed too big for someone so small. Dominic pulled her closer and she leaned into him, still trembling slightly. Reed's expression softened. You're right. What he did was unforgivable. But his testimony will help us make sure Theo Vaughn and Victor Kane pay for everything they've done. Not just to your father but to you too. The door opened and one of the FBI's forensic accountants entered with another file. Agent Reed, you're going to want to see this. We tracked the payments from Victor Kane to Theo Vaughn. Goes back 12 years. This wasn't a recent partnership. They've been planning this since before Sterling Industries even went public. 12 years. Dominic felt sick. Theo had been his friend for 30 years. Had stood beside him at Celeste's funeral. Had helped him build the company from nothing. And for 12 of those years he'd been planning to take it all away. What? The question came out barely above a whisper. What did I do to make him hate me that much? Lily looked up at him, her hazel eyes, Celeste's eyes, full of wisdom that shouldn't belong to an 8-year-old. Elena used to tell me that sometimes people's anger isn't really about you. It's about them. About feeling like they're not enough. Maybe Mr. Vaughn felt like that. Dominic crouched down to her level. When did you get so wise? She gave him a small smile. When you grow up without a home, you learn things fast. The words were a knife to his chest. She shouldn't have had to grow up that way. Shouldn't have had to learn survival skills at 8 years old. If he'd known, if someone had told him the truth. But that was the past. And dwelling on it wouldn't change anything. Reed closed his laptop. We'll move on Theo and Victor Kane within 48 hours. In the meantime, Mr. Sterling, I'd suggest you keep a low profile. They're going to be desperate when they realize we're closing in. Dominic nodded. One more thing. I want to be there when you arrest Theo. That's highly irregular. I know. But I need to look him in the eye. I need him to know that I know what he did. Reed studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll see what I can do. The meeting was set for Wednesday afternoon in a private room at FBI headquarters. Theo had been told he was coming in to give additional testimony about Dominic's alleged fraud. He didn't know he was walking into a trap. Dominic sat on one side of a table with Reed beside him. A wire ran under his shirt, recording everything. On the other side of the one-way mirror, a team of agents waited with an arrest warrant. When Theo walked in, Dominic barely recognized him. His childhood friend looked older than he had just days ago. lines around his eyes, gray in his hair that hadn't been there before. He looked tired, stressed. Good. Dom? Theo's voice carried relief as he sat down. I'm so glad you made bail. This whole thing is a nightmare. I've been working with the FBI, trying to help them understand that you couldn't have done what they're accusing you of. The lie came so smoothly. Like Theo had been practicing it. Or like he'd been lying for so long it had become second nature. Dominic kept his voice level. Have you? Of course. Theo leaned forward, earnest. You're my best friend. I know you didn't embezzle that money. Someone must have hacked your accounts, forged your signatures. We'll figure out who did this. I promise. Someone did do this. Dominic watched Theo's face carefully. Someone spent years building fake evidence, creating offshore accounts in my name, paying off doctors and nurses to hide the truth about my daughter. Theo's expression flickered, just for a second. But Dominic saw it. Saw the mask slip before Theo pulled it back into place. Your daughter? Theo's voice was careful now. Dom, your daughter died 8 years ago. I was there. I saw how destroyed you were. No, you saw an opportunity. The words came out cold. You saw a man who'd just lost everything and you decided to make sure he stayed broken. Because that made me easier to control. Easier to manipulate. Easier to destroy when you were ready. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Dominic pulled out the flash drive Lily had stolen. This says different. Emails between you and Victor Kane. Bank records showing payments going back 12 years. Text messages coordinating with Dr. Webb to falsify my daughter's death certificate. Theo's face went pale. Where did you get that? My daughter got it. The daughter you tried to erase. She broke into your office and took it from your safe. The same safe where you kept the combination as October 15, 17. Celeste's death date. You used my wife's death as a password while you planned to destroy me. Something cracked in Theo's expression. The mask shattered and what came out was ugly. Raw. Years of bitterness that had been festering beneath the surface. You want to know why? His voice rose, shaking with emotion. Because I was tired of being invisible. Tired of doing all the work while you got all the glory. We built that company together, but everyone always talked about Dominic Sterling. Like I didn't exist. Like I was just your sidekick. We were partners. We were never partners. Theo slammed his hand on the table. You were the visionary. I was the guy who made the trains run on time. You got the magazine covers and the speaking engagements and the respect. What did I get? Nothing. Just the privilege of watching you succeed. So you decided to take it all away. Dominic's voice was steady, but inside he was screaming. You decided that if you couldn't have the credit, I shouldn't have anything at all. You were weak after Celeste died. Theo's words came faster now, like a dam had broken. Pathetic. Drowning in grief. I kept the company running while you fell apart. And no one even noticed. So yes, when Victor Kane approached me with an offer, a real partnership where I'd get the recognition I deserved, I took it. And my daughter? What about her? Theo looked away. That was necessary. You needed to stay broken. If the baby had lived, you might have pulled yourself together. Found something to live for besides work. I couldn't risk that. The words hung in the air, monstrous and bare. Dominic felt rage surge through him, hot and violent. His hands clenched into fists under the table. Every instinct screamed at him to lunge across the table, to make Theo hurt the way he'd been hurt. But Lily's voice echoed in his head. Elena used to say that sometimes the truth is scarier than lies. He forced himself to breathe, to stay seated, to let the wire capture every word. You stole 8 years of my daughter's life. Dominic's voice was quiet now, deadly calm. 8 years I could have spent being her father. You let her grow up alone, scared, running from place to place because you needed me broken. Theo's jaw clenched. I did what I had to do to survive. You never understood what it was like. Always being second. Always being the one people forgot about. So you became someone people will never forget. Dominic stood slowly. The door opened and FBI agents flooded in. You'll be remembered, Theo, as the man who betrayed his best friend, who stole a child's life, who destroyed everything because you were too insecure to build something of your own. Theo's eyes went wide as the agents moved toward him with handcuffs. Wait, Dom, please. Don't. Dominic's voice cut him off. You're not my friend. You haven't been for a long time. Maybe you never were. Theodore Vaughn, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, falsifying government documents, and accessory to kidnapping. The agent read him his rights while snapping the handcuffs closed. Theo struggled against the restraints, his face red. This isn't over. Victor Kane has resources you can't imagine. We'll fight this. But Dominic just watched him being led away. And all he felt was empty. Not satisfied. Not vindicated. Just tired. The door closed behind Theo, and Reed put a hand on Dominic's shoulder. That took courage. I know it wasn't easy. He was my best friend. Dominic stared at the empty chair across from him. 30 years. How did I not see it? Because you trusted him. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Dominic thought about Lily waiting for him outside. About the future they were going to build together. And he realized that maybe that was the difference between him and Theo. Dominic had learned that strength wasn't about power or recognition. It was about getting up after you'd been knocked down. About choosing love over bitterness. About being the kind of person an 8-year-old girl would risk everything to save. Victor Kane made it as far as JFK Airport before the FBI caught up with him. He chartered a private jet to Sao Paulo, probably planning to disappear into Brazil's non-extradition zones. But Reed's team had flagged his passport the moment the warrant was issued. Dominic watched the arrest on the news from his apartment, Lily curled up beside him on the couch. The footage showed Kane in handcuffs being led through the terminal while travelers stopped to record on their phones. His expensive suit was rumpled. His silver hair mussed. He looked nothing like the smooth, predatory businessman who'd sat across from Dominic in that boardroom. He looked like what he was. A criminal who'd finally been caught. The news anchor's voice narrated the scene. Victor Kane, CEO of Nightshade Global, was arrested today on multiple charges including fraud, conspiracy, and corporate espionage. This comes just days after his alleged partner, Theodore Vaughn, was arrested in connection with a scheme to frame billionaire Dominic Sterling. Sources say the investigation has uncovered evidence of similar schemes targeting other business owners over the past decade. Lily's hand found Dominic's. Is it really over? The criminal part is. Dominic pulled her closer. They'll go to trial. Probably spend years in prison. But for us? Yes, it's over. The news switched to footage of Sterling Industries headquarters. The stock price had rebounded after news of Dominic's innocence broke. The board had issued a statement expressing their full confidence in him and requesting he return as CEO. Dominic's phone had been ringing all day with calls from board members, investors, business partners. Everyone wanted to welcome him back. To apologize for doubting him. To pretend they'd never believed he was guilty. He'd ignored every call. Lily looked up at him. Are you going to go back? To the company? Dominic thought about the question. A week ago the answer would have been obvious. Of course he'd go back. Sterling Industries was his life. Everything he'd built. Everything he'd worked for. But that was before. Before he'd held his daughter for the first time. Before he'd realized what he'd almost lost by chasing success instead of meaning. I don't know. He answered honestly. What do you think I should do? Lily bit her lip, considering. Elena used to tell me that sometimes we hold on to things because we're scared of what happens if we let go. But letting go doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it means making room for something better. When did 8-year-olds get so smart? She grinned. I had a good teacher. The Sterling Industries boardroom looked exactly the same as it had the day Dominic was arrested. Same mahogany table. Same leather chairs. Same view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. But everything felt different now. Dominic stood at the head of the table while the board members waited for him to speak. They'd called this emergency meeting eager to have him back. Eager to return to normal. But normal was the last thing Dominic wanted. First, I want to thank you all for your support. He kept his voice even, professional. I know the last week has been difficult for everyone. The board members nodded, murmuring agreement. One of them, Janet Reeves, who'd been with the company since the beginning, spoke up. We never doubted you, Dominic. Not for a second. It was a lie, but Dominic let it pass. Some things weren't worth fighting about. I've thought a lot about the future these past few days. About what I want Sterling Industries to be. And about what I want my life to be. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I've decided to step down as CEO. The room erupted. Board members talking over each other, demanding explanations. Dominic let the chaos wash over him and waited for it to die down. Janet's voice cut through the noise. You can't be serious. You built this company. It's your legacy. No. Dominic's voice was quiet but firm. My daughter is my legacy. And I've already missed 8 years of her life. I'm not missing any more. The room went silent. Through the window, Dominic could see the city stretching out below. Millions of people living their lives, chasing their own versions of success. He'd spent 20 years thinking that success meant buildings and stock prices and magazine covers. He'd been wrong. I'll stay on the board. Help with the transition. But I'm done being CEO. I'm done choosing this. He gestured around the boardroom, over what actually matters. One of the younger board members leaned forward. And what matters, Mr. Sterling? Family. The answer was simple. Being there for the people you love. Actually living your life instead of just building monuments to it. He pulled out his phone and sent a text. 30 seconds later, the boardroom door opened. Lily stood in the doorway, looking small and uncertain in a room designed to intimidate. Dominic held out his hand, and she crossed to him without hesitation. This is my daughter, Lily. He felt her small hand slip into his. She's the bravest person I've ever met. And she's the reason I'm making this choice. Because she taught me that success isn't about how much you build. It's about who you build it for. The board members stared at them. The billionaire CEO and the 8-year-old girl who'd brought down a conspiracy. Janet's expression softened, and she nodded slowly. We understand. Her voice was gentle. And for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Dominic squeezed Lily's hand. I know I am. They walked out of the boardroom together, leaving Sterling Industries behind. And as the elevator descended from the 38th floor, Dominic felt lighter than he had in 8 years. He'd built an empire. Now it was time to build a life. Sunday mornings became their time. Dominic would wake up early, still not used to sleeping past 6 even without the demands of running a company, and make pancakes. Badly at first. Lily taught him that you had to wait for bubbles to form before flipping them, and that chocolate chips made everything better. They ate breakfast together at the small kitchen table in Dominic's apartment, which had started to feel less like a bachelor's space and more like a home. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. Her books piled up on the coffee table. Her laugh filled rooms that had been silent for too long. After breakfast, they'd walk to the park. Feed the ducks. Swing on the swings even though Dominic was probably too old for it. Talk about everything and nothing. Today, they were planting a memorial garden on the grounds of a small community center Dominic had donated to. Roses for Celeste. She'd loved roses. Lily knelt in the dirt, her small hands carefully patting soil around a new plant. Do you think she can see us? Dominic knelt beside her. I'd like to think so. I hope she can. What do you think she'd say? She could talk to us right now? Dominic thought about Celeste. About her laugh. Her kindness. The way she'd always seen the best in people. I think she'd say she's proud of you. Proud of how brave you've been. Proud of how you saved me when I couldn't save myself. Lily was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I'm scared I'm going to forget her. I dream about her, but I never really knew her. Not like you did. Then I'll tell you about her. Dominic pulled Lily close, getting dirt on both their clothes. I'll tell you every story I can remember. About how we met. About how she laughed at terrible jokes. About how she believed in magic and second chances and love that never dies. Even when people do. Especially then. They finished planting the roses as the sun climbed higher. When they were done, Lily stood back and looked at the garden. It was small but beautiful. A living memorial to a woman she'd barely known but carried in her DNA. Thank you. Lily's voice was soft. For letting me know her. Even if it's just through your memories. She's part of you. Dominic brushed dirt from her cheek. Every time I look at you, I see her eyes. Her smile. Her courage. She lives on in you, sweetheart. And that's the most beautiful thing I can imagine. They visited Celeste's grave that afternoon. It was the first time Lily had seen it. A simple stone in a quiet cemetery, marked with Celeste's name and the dates that bracketed a life cut too short. Lily placed a rose on the grave. The same kind they'd planted that morning. Hi, Mama. Her voice was barely audible. I'm Lily, your daughter. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. Dominic felt tears burn his eyes. Beside him, Lily continued talking to the stone like Celeste could hear her. Elena told me you loved me. That you wanted me. I just wanted you to know that I'm okay. Dad found me. Well, I found him. But we're together now. And we're going to be okay. Her voice cracked. I wish you were here. But I understand why you're not. And I promise I'll take care of Dad for you. Dominic pulled her into his arms, and they cried together in the autumn sunshine. Crying for what they'd lost. For what they'd found. For 8 years that could never be recovered but could maybe, somehow, be forgiven. When they finally walked back to the car, Lily slipped her hand into his. Dad. Yes, sweetheart? I love you. 3 simple words. But they meant everything. I love you too, Lily. More than anything in this world. The courtroom was packed for Theodore Vaughn's sentencing. Media. Victims of his schemes. Sterling Industries employees who'd lost their jobs in the chaos. Everyone wanted to see justice served. Dominic sat in the front row with Lily beside him. On the stand, Theo looked smaller than he'd ever seen him. Prison had aged him. Broken him. The confident businessman was gone, replaced by someone who looked hollow. The judge read through the charges. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Witness tampering. Accessory to kidnapping. Each one carried years. Together they added up to 15 years minimum. Mr. Vaughn, do you have anything to say before sentencing? Theo stood slowly. His eyes found Dominic's across the courtroom. I'm sorry. His voice was barely audible. I let jealousy poison everything. I destroyed the best friendship I ever had because I was too weak to deal with my own insecurity. If I could take it back. But you can't. The judge's voice was firm. Your actions caused immeasurable harm. Not just to Mr. Sterling but to his daughter. To everyone who trusted you. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison. The gavel came down. Guards moved forward to escort Theo away. As he passed Dominic's row, their eyes met one last time. And Dominic felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just a tired sort of peace. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Dominic gave a brief statement, thanking the FBI, thanking his legal team, expressing hope that the victims of Theo's schemes would find closure. Then he and Lily slipped away before the questions could start. They stopped for ice cream on the way home. Sat on a bench in the park and watched dogs play while the autumn leaves fell around them. How do you feel? Lily asked. Now that it's really over? Dominic thought about the question. Relieved. Sad. Grateful. All of it at once. She nodded like she understood. Elena used to say that endings and beginnings are the same thing. Just depends on how you look at them. She was a smart woman. She was. Lily finished her ice cream and leaned against his shoulder. I miss her. Me too. Even though I never met her. She saved you. That makes her a hero in my book. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the world go by. And Dominic realized this was what happiness felt like. Not grand achievements or billion-dollar deals. Just ice cream and autumn leaves and his daughter's head on his shoulder. This was enough. More than enough. This was everything. 1 year later, Dominic stood on a beach watching the sun set over the Pacific. The Celeste Sterling Foundation, dedicated to helping children in foster care and supporting single parents, had just opened its 5th location. The work was challenging but meaningful. The kind of thing that left him tired at the end of the day but satisfied in a way running Sterling Industries never had. Lily ran along the water's edge, her laughter carried on the ocean breeze. She'd grown in the past year. Not just taller but more confident. More secure. The scared 8-year-old who'd appeared in the rain was gone, replaced by a happy 9-year-old who knew she was loved. She splashed through a wave and ran back to him, sandy and breathless. Dad, look. She held out a perfect spiral shell. For the collection. They'd started collecting shells 6 months ago during their first beach vacation. Now they had jars full of them back home, each one a memory of a perfect day. It's beautiful. Dominic took the shell and pocketed it carefully. We'll add it when we get back. Lily flopped down in the sand beside him, and they watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The ocean was calm tonight. Peaceful. The kind of evening that felt like a gift. Dad. Lily's voice was thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever wonder why I could see the future that one time? Why I knew what was going to happen with Theo and the meeting? Dominic had wondered that exact thing for the past year. Lily's visions had stopped after he'd been released from prison. She still had dreams sometimes, but nothing like the specific, detailed warnings she'd given him. It was like once her mission was complete, the gift had faded. Every day. He admitted. What do you think? Lily drew patterns in the sand with her finger. I think Mama gave me that gift. Just once. Just long enough to save you. Because she loved us both so much that even dying couldn't stop her from protecting us. The words hung in the air, simple and profound. Dominic felt tears prick his eyes. You might be right. I know I am. She looked up at him with those hazel eyes, Celeste's eyes, full of certainty. I felt her with me. Every time I tried to warn you. Every time I didn't give up. She was there. Telling me to keep fighting. Telling me that love doesn't end just because someone's gone. Dominic pulled Lily close, and they watched the sun sink below the horizon. The sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear one by one, filling the darkness with light. Your mama loved you so much. His voice was thick with emotion. She loved both of us. And everything good in my life, everything, comes from that love. Even me? Especially you. You're the best part of her and the best part of me. And I'm so grateful I get to be your dad. Lily wrapped her arms around him. I'm grateful too. Even though it took 8 years and a conspiracy and almost going to prison. We found each other. Yeah. Dominic laughed through his tears. We did. They sat there as night fell completely, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the sound of waves and the distant cry of seagulls. The past year had been full of challenges, legal battles, therapy, learning how to be a family. But they'd faced it together. And sitting there on that beach, Dominic realized he'd finally found what he'd been searching for his whole life. Not success, not recognition, not empire. Just this moment, this love, this life they were building together. I love you, sweetheart. The words came easily now after a year of practice. So much. I love you too, Dad. Lily squeezed him tight. Forever and ever. Forever and ever. The stars came out fully overhead, and somewhere in that vast darkness, Dominic liked to think Celeste was watching. Smiling at the family she'd protected even after death. At the love that had survived impossible odds. At the daughter who'd saved her father through courage and determination, and a gift she'd been given for one perfect, necessary moment. And as the waves crashed against the shore and his daughter's heartbeat steadied against his chest, Dominic Sterling finally understood what it meant to have everything. If this story touched your heart, if you felt every moment of this journey with us, then this is your family too. Subscribe so you never miss another story about love, redemption, and the bonds that can never be broken. Share in the comments which moment hit you the hardest. Was it the reunion on the courthouse steps? The confrontation with Theo? Or that final moment on the beach when a father and daughter finally found their peace? And remember, sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important warnings. Sometimes the bravest heroes are the ones who refuse to give up, even when no one believes them. Sometimes love really does transcend death, protecting us in ways we'll never fully understand. Dominic and Lily's journey reminds us that it's never too late to choose what truly matters. That success means nothing if you lose yourself along the way. That the greatest empires we can build aren't made of steel and glass. They're made of moments like these. Sunsets and seashells and whispered, I love yous, that echo through eternity. What would you have done in Dominic's shoes? Would you have listened to the warning? Would you have believed in the impossible? Tell us your thoughts below. Your story, your voice matters too. This is just the beginning of their journey together. There are more stories to tell, more moments to share, more lessons about love and family and never giving up on the people who matter most. Be part of this community. Hit that subscribe button. Because families, the ones we're born into and the ones we choose, are worth fighting for. Always.